Today, we are taking on a massive mission, unpacking the complex sort of dual reality of a global juggernaut. You sent us a mountain material, the company's highly detailed 2024 sustainability report, which, I mean, it's a document heavy on metrics, achievements, and future ambitions. But we've paired that with some really crucial external analyses focusing on their sprawling logistics infrastructure, their labor practices, and, the absolute environmental impact. Our goal for you, the curious learner, is to synthesize these materials, to understand not just the stated goals, but the inherent daily tension between those goals and the operational speed required to power their core business. We're trying to go beyond the press release numbers to see where the physical reality of delivering billions of packages conflicts with the ambition of a net zero future.
And that is precisely the theme of this deep dive. We're looking at a classic corporate paradox. On one side, you have this globally distributed organization executing a multi-billion-dollar commitment to really ambitious long-term goals, net zero by 2040, these massive, affordable housing funds, technologically advanced material innovation. A lot of these efforts are frankly pioneering. They're setting industry benchmarks. But at the same time, the underlying engine, the exponential growth in package volume in physical facilities and the transportation networks needed to maintain that hyperspeed delivery is generating, well, contradictory data points. This is especially true in emissions and labor classification. We're essentially watching a company try to steer a supertanker toward a tiny ethical waypoint while the engines are running at maximum velocity.
Driving both innovation and, I guess, inherent consequence at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the top with Section 1. The climate pledge ambitions versus operational reality.
Yeah.
And I think we have to start with renewable energy achievements because the scale of the investment is, it's genuinely breathtaking.
It is. The core commitment is the climate pledge, which they co-founded back in 2019. The aim is to reach net zero carbon emissions across all global operations by 2040. And the source material highlights a really staggering success here, one they actually achieved 5 years ahead of schedule.
That's the 100% electricity match, right?
Exactly. The original target for getting 100% of their consumed electricity matched with renewable energy sources was 2030. They actually hit that in 2024, making it the second consecutive year.
And they've been the world's largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy for a while now.
Since 2020, consistently. And this is not a trivial achievement. It means that for every kilowatt hour of electricity their operations consume, whether it's a fulfillment center, a data center, or an office, they purchase the equivalent amount of carbon-free electricity generated from wind, solar, or hydro on the grid.
And the sheer scale of the investment in just one area, like offshore wind, is hard to grasp.
Oh yes, the scale is enormous. They're investing across the board utility scale solar and wind, nuclear, battery storage. In 2024, they became the world's largest corporate buyer of offshore wind.
And that enabled, what was the number?
Nearly 1.3 gigawatts of capacity across 5 offshore farms in Europe. The total renewable energy capacity they've announced globally as of the start of 2025 is 621 projects. That represents 34 gigawatts of carbon-free capacity.
So to put that 34 gigawatts in perspective for you, that is more installed capacity than the entire country of Portugal uses right now. When you talk about corporate commitment, that level of financial dedication to installing new renewable capacity, it really sets a precedent.
And this commitment, it extends directly to the consumer experience. They report that 100% of energy used by Active Echo, Fire TV, and Ring devices worldwide was matched with wind and solar capacity in 2024.
So they're trying to integrate it deeply into the whole value chain, not just the warehouses. And of course, they also run AWS, which is the cloud backbone for a huge part of the modern internet. And we all know data centers consume massive amounts of energy, especially now with the AI boom. How are they measuring efficiency there?
Right. The efficiency of the AWS cloud is central to this story. AWS has a public commitment to building a more energy-efficient, lower-carbon business, especially with that exponential rise in AI workloads. They measure this using something called power usage effectiveness, or PUE.
Okay, so what exactly is PUE and what's a good score?
PUE is it's a pretty simple ratio. It's the total energy going into a data center divided by the energy that's actually used to run the computing equipment.
So a perfect score would be 1.0.
A perfect score is 1.0, meaning every single unit of energy goes to the servers and 0 is wasted on things like cooling, lighting, or other infrastructure.
And the industry average is what, about 1.25?
Typically around 1.25, yes.
And their metric?
Their global PUE for AWS data centers is 1.15. So that's significantly better than the industry average. And what's more, external research estimates that AWS infrastructure is up to 4.1 times more energy efficient than, traditional on-premises computing. They're basically arguing that migrating your business computing to their cloud inherently makes the internet more efficient.
That sounds like a resounding success then, especially in managing the energy intensity of AI. But here's where we hit our first major collision point, which the report itself acknowledges. Despite being the largest corporate renewable energy buyer in the world and hitting that 100% electricity match, they still saw a 1% increase in indirect emissions from purchased electricity in 2024.
And this is where that constant, just dizzying velocity of scale becomes so clear. They are building new data centers and adding capacity so rapidly that even though they are matching every unit of consumed electricity with renewable purchases, the absolute volume of electricity required for advanced tech like AI is increasing.
It's increasing faster than they can physically get that carbon-free electricity delivered to the specific points of consumption.
Exactly. It's a constant, exhausting race just to stay still given the velocity of their growth.
And that leads us to the second, much bigger conflict. It illustrates why matching electricity, often called Scope 2 emissions, doesn't solve the core problem of delivering physical goods. We have to look at the external viewpoint on transportation emissions.
This is the carbon penalty for speed.
Yes.
This is critical. We need to distinguish between Scope 2 emissions, which they are, effectively neutralizing by buying renewable power, and Scope 1 and Scope 3 emissions.
Which is the fuel being burned.
The fossil fuels burned by the vehicles and planes they use or contract. The external reports clearly show that since the climate pledge began in 2019, U.S. transportation pollution has just surged, fundamentally overwhelming the gains made in the cloud or in their facilities.
How significant a surge are we talking about?
We're talking about an average annual growth rate of 18% in CO2 emissions from U.S. shipping and delivery, just between 2019 and 2023. The total figure ballooned from 3.33 million metric tons to 5.84 million metric tons. That kind of growth rate, it demonstrates a strategic prioritization of velocity above everything else.
And the analysis points to three key culprits in this surge, all directly related to how packages move.
Absolutely. The massive contributors to this growth between 2019 and 2023 were first air freight CO2, which increased by 67%.
67%.
Then you have fossil fuel-powered delivery van CO2, which grew by over 190%. And finally, heavy-duty truck emissions grew by 51%. The overall result is just a massive tangible growth in pollution from the physical act of logistics.
And this brings us back to that crucial strategic insight, the why it matters. We, the customers, demand speed, and that speed comes with this disproportionate carbon cost, which is borne primarily by air freight.
That's the painful trade-off. In 2023, air freight generated over 42% of the carbon emissions for an average package's journey in the U.S.
42% just from the air travel part.
This is from the air. Heavy-duty trucks contributed another 37% to the dock-to-door emissions. This highlights the difficult reality that even though they're the largest delivery company in the U.S. by volume, they have a 27% share of the parcel market, that scale and velocity rely heavily on the most carbon-intensive forms of transport.
So when you click next day shipping, you are essentially paying for a huge carbon penalty.
Yes, which, given the 15 billion parcels they shipped globally in 2023, results in massive absolute emissions.
So if the problem is the fossil fuel engine driving the vehicles and planes, that transitions us logically to Section 2, decarbonizing delivery and infrastructure. How are they attempting to put their money where their mouth is to address this transportation surge?
Well, they're focusing on a two-pronged attack. One is heavy investment in zero-emission alternatives for the last mile, and the other is leveraging existing electric or intermodal solutions.
Let's start with that last mile. The concept of micromobility is really fascinating for dense urban areas.
Micromobility is key to replacing their delivery vans, which are, a major source of urban pollution and congestion. This means that they are rolling out these micromobility hubs that use e-cargo bikes and on-foot deliveries.
And this isn't just a small experiment anymore.
No, not at all. They are already operating in over 45 cities across Europe and in New York City.
And the technical capabilities of these e-bikes are pretty impressive.
They are moving serious volume. The source highlights a specific pilot in Brooklyn, New York, starting in November 2024, using a new e-cargo delivery bike model. This one bike can carry up to 120 packages per trip.
120.
Per trip. That volume allows them to take multiple delivery vans off the road every day in highly congested areas like Manhattan or central London.
And they're also leveraging existing infrastructure, like rail. which is far more efficient than trucks for medium to long distances.
Exactly. This is the intermodal solution. In the UK, they launched real deliveries in 2024 using the fully electric West Coast Main Line. This is a brilliant strategic move because they are using infrastructure that is already 100% electric, essentially guaranteeing zero tailpipe emissions on that leg of the journey.
And the numbers.
They expect 5 million products to travel on that electric rail network in 2025 alone.
And then, stepping outside the developed world, we see a focus on tackling heavy-duty transport in emerging economies through this lane shift initiative.
Lane Shift is a significant public-private partnership. It's a $10 million initiative co-founded with C40 cities, and it's specifically designed to accelerate the deployment of zero tailpipe emission electric trucks and the necessary charging infrastructure in major high-growth markets.
India, Brazil, Mexico.
Right.
And this specific project in India really illustrates the outsized impact of heavy trucking there.
Oh, it's stark. The Lane Shift India program launched a 370-kilometer EV freight corridor between Bengaluru and Chennai. This focus is strategically vital because in India, trucking represents only 3% of the vehicles on the road.
Only 3%.
But it generates a staggering 34% of the country's CO Euro tailpipe emissions.
Wow.
So electrifying that 370-kilometer route and then using the data gathered over 6 months to build a comprehensive EV freight roadmap has the potential to tackle a hugely concentrated source of pollution.
Beyond the global corridors, they are also tackling the specific problem of port logistics, which uses some of the dirtiest heavy trucks on the road.
Right. They're investing directly in zero tailpipe emission drayage solutions. Drayage is that short-haul transport of containers from ports to nearby distribution centers. Through the Climate Pledge Fund, they invested in a company called Forum Mobility, which provides charging infrastructure and Class 8 electric trucks, specifically for drayage around crucial western U.S. ports like Oakland, Los Angeles, and Long Beach. They understand they have to build the entire ecosystem, the truck and the charger, to decarbonize the crucial first and last miles of ocean freight.
Now let's move to the incredibly difficult challenge: lower carbon fuels for air and sea. These sectors don't have viable, mass-scale electric solutions yet.
No, this requires driving down the costs of low-carbon substitutes. On the marine side, they purchased lower-emission biofuel services for over 10% of their ocean cargo in 2024. They're supporting industry-wide commitments, like the First Movers Coalition, which is aiming for 10% zero-emission fuels for international shipping by 2030, and another one called Zemba, targeting 100% zero-emission shipping by 2040.
They're trying to signal long-term market demand.
Exactly.
And in aviation, sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, is the current solution, but it's still very expensive and low volume globally.
It is. They procured 3.7 million gallons of blended SF in 2024. And to accelerate the market, they co-founded the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance and were key to launching this SFV registry, which increases transparency in how SAF is deployed and accounted for.
So it's a classic move of using their financial power to establish demand signals and create transparent infrastructure, forcing the scaling needed to bring prices down.
That's the playbook.
But the immediate massive internal pivot has been to renewable diesel in ground operations, which allows them to use existing vehicles while still cutting emissions.
This scale-up is phenomenal because it shows just how rapid their operational deployment can be. Renewable diesel is produced from waste fats and oils, so it's a lower carbon fuel substitute.
And the numbers are huge.
They increased its use in middle and last mile operations dramatically from just 286,300 gallons in 2023 to 4.7 million gallons in 2024.
That is an enormous jump. It shows they can rapidly integrate alternative fuels into their existing logistics infrastructure without needing to replace the vehicles immediately.
Right, it's a bridge solution.
Finally, let's talk about the emissions embedded in the physical growth itself. Reducing embodied carbon in construction. Building those massive fulfillment centers and data centers generates a huge footprint before they even turn the lights on.
Embodied carbon is the total greenhouse gas emissions associated with building materials throughout their life cycle, from extraction, manufacturing, transportation, all the way to construction. It's a vital piece of the puzzle because as they expand their physical footprint globally, they need to ensure the buildings themselves don't undermine the net zero goal.
And the sources detail some highly specific material innovations being tested.
They do. They report that 49 building projects in 2024 utilized lower carbon materials, avoiding at least 77,000 metric tons of embodied co-euro. The innovations are really specific.
It's like with steel.
For structural steel, they purchased hydrogen direct reduction steel from a company called SAB and used it in the facade of one AWS data center. And hydrogen direct reduction, it replaces coal and coke with hydrogen, which is a key industrial process to decarbonize global steel production. It's one of the hardest industries to fix.
And then there's concrete, which is the world's second most used material after water, and globally it accounts for about 8% of all emissions.
And the carbon intensity of concrete comes primarily from the clinker. That's the binding agent made by heating limestone and other materials at extremely high temperatures. They're piloting lower carbon concrete solutions using calcined clay and cement that contains less than 25% clinker.
Well, what was the measurable result of that concrete pilot?
Using that lower clinker concrete at one data center site resulted in the avoidance of 1,500 tons of co-euro, which is a 60% reduction against their 2021 baseline.
That's significant.
It is. And they're also investing in companies like Paybol, which converts captured co-euros into carbon-storing building materials, which they intend to trial in a European data center. These are long-term, cutting-edge plays designed to fix the underlying material economy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We need to transition to the most carbon-intensive piece of the puzzle we discussed earlier, air freight. Section 3 covers the anatomy of Amazon Air, the 101 plane virtual juggernaut.
Amazon Air, formerly known as Prime Air, is one of the biggest stories in air cargo transformation. It's what you'd call a virtual cargo airline, meaning it operates exclusively to transport their packages, but, and this is key, it doesn't own or fly the planes directly.
So how does that model work?
It relies almost entirely on wet leasing, or the CMI model, that stands for crew, maintenance, and insurance. They contract out the physical operation of the aircraft to partners like Atlas Air, ATI, Southern Air, and Hawaiian Airlines.
Which is a very efficient scaling model.
Incredibly efficient. It allows them to minimize fixed costs and rapidly adapt capacity based on seasonal demand without having to maintain the massive labor force and operational complexity of a traditional cargo airline.
But the scale has become immense very quickly since they launched in, 2015?
Very quickly. The fleet size, according to the sources, stands at 101 aircraft. Now, while that is huge and growing rapidly, it's still smaller than the entrenched competitors.
Like FedEx and UPS.
Right. FedEx operates 376 jets, and UPS has 295. But they are projected to double their fleet size again in the next 7 or 8 years, which would make them a major player, almost out of nowhere.
The sources also indicate a recent strategic shift, moving away from just simple point-to-point service to a more sophisticated, density-driven hub model.
Yes. Since mid-2023, the strategy has definitely shifted. It's moved from broad network expansion with smaller planes to maximizing capacity utilization on key hub routes. They dropped 5 smaller U.S. airports, retired their turboprop aircraft. It all signals a focus on long-haul density.
So the planes are crucial for transporting packages from a distant fulfillment center outside the local ground network to the buyer's region.
Exactly. This is how they cut the time down from days to hours. This is what enables those next-day and 2-day speeds.
They're also investing in much larger, wide-body aircraft, which seems to signal an escalation in their ambitions.
They're leasing 10 Airbus A330-300 P2F freighters, which will be operated by Hawaiian Airlines. The A330 is a significantly larger aircraft than their standard Boeing 767s.
So what does that move signal?
2 things, really. First, a need for a growing average payload to handle increasing package volume. And second, the potential positioning of the virtual airline to handle more general, high-value air freight that isn't exclusively their own parcels.
So they're positioning themselves to become a more general, long-haul air cargo competitor.
Which, crucially, further escalates that environmental tension we discussed earlier. More planes, more flights, more emissions.
Right, and I found their airport strategy fascinating. Unlike FedEx and UPS, which rely on these mega hubs like Memphis and Louisville that mix passenger and cargo traffic, the source material shows they prefer cargo-focused airports.
That is a key strategic difference. Their network shows a much greater orientation toward these cargo-focused airports, defined as those handling fewer than 300,000 passengers a year.
So we're talking about places like Wilmington Air Park in Ohio, Fort Worth Alliance in Texas, San Bernardino in California.
Exactly. These airports allow for quicker turnaround times, less congestion, and dedicated infrastructure designed purely for fast logistics processing, which is vital for maintaining that delivery speed.
However, this virtual model Brilliant as it is for scaling, it creates specific vulnerabilities, doesn't it? Particularly around safety culture and labor control, since they rely entirely on contractors.
That CMI model is the structural weakness. We've seen historical safety incidents like the tragic Atlas Air Flight 30591 crash near Houston in 2019, which resulted in 3 fatalities.
The first fatal B767F accident.
Yes. And while the cause was complex, any incident involving one of their contracted carriers reflects poorly on the safety culture of the overall logistics machine. More recently, there was a Cargojet B767-300F runway overrun in Vancouver in late 2024, which further highlights the risks inherent in these fast-paced, high-volume cargo operations.
And the reliance on contractors directly fuels labor tension, specifically with the pilots at Air Transport International, or ATI. They operate the largest number of Amazon-branded 767s.
The ATI pilots, who are represented by the Airline Pilots Association, are embroiled in a prolonged and very heated contract dispute.
And what's the accusation?
They accuse management of actively delaying negotiations, which have stretched on for over 3.5 years, until Amazon's contract renewal is imminent. The union argues this artificial timeline is designed to suppress wages and is creating a toxic, unstable environment, which is leading to high pilot attrition.
And the core issue is a significant pay disparity compared to their peers flying similar aircraft.
The numbers really illustrate the point clearly. The pilots are seeking pay comparable to Hawaiian Airlines, which recently joined the network. They point out that a first-year ATI pilot earns only about $68,000.
Which is much less than their counterparts.
Significantly less. You contrast that with counterparts flying the same large freighters at FedEx, who earn around $88,000, or Delta pilots, who start at $107,000. This disparity makes pilot retention extremely difficult.
There was that example from another contractor.
ABX. More than 15% of their pilots left in 2018. When pilot attrition is that high, it raises critical questions about experience levels and the safety culture within this virtual fleet. The union maintains that their dedication to the e-commerce sector is just not being rewarded with a market-based competitive contract.
Okay, shifting gears now, let's look at Section 4, waste reduction and the circular economy. This involves how they manage the physical output of all those packages the virtual airline is delivering.
Their approach to waste management is highly systematic. It's structured around a formal waste hierarchy. First, prevent, then reduce, reuse, and finally recycle or compost. They explicitly view waste not as a byproduct, but as a defect in the fulfillment process.
They're trying to engineer it out.
Nice.
And their overall operational waste diversion rate is substantial, though it does include both recycling and waste-to-energy incineration.
Their reported landfill diversion rate is 85%. Given the nature of their business, cardboard and wood are massive components, making up 65% of their operational waste footprint, and they successfully recycle nearly 100% of those materials, which is key to hitting that high overall rate.
On the perishable side, food waste is a major area of focus, with a concrete, measurable goal.
Yes, they've committed to reducing food waste by 50% by 2030 across their U.S. and European operations. To address surplus inventory from their grocery distribution centers, donation is prioritized as the top recovery pathway.
And that resulted in
the donation of 81 million meal equivalents globally in 2024.
But for the average listener, I think the most visible change is the packaging transformation, particularly the war on single-use plastic.
This is where the measurable achievement is clearest. In 2024, they reduced total plastic packaging globally by 16.4%. And since 2020, they've avoided 152,062 metric tons of single-use plastic globally.
And this progress is due almost entirely to two major, highly visible operational shifts in North America.
Yes, the first being the removal of those ubiquitous plastic air pillows.
Right.
They removed 100% of plastic air pillows from delivery packaging at all North American fulfillment centers, replacing them with recyclable paper fill. Simultaneously, they've increased the use of paper bags, even retrofitting their automated packing machines to create made-to-fit paper bags that require less material overall.
And what was the measurable consequence of that shift?
It was dramatic. In North America, the percentage of shipments containing single-use plastic delivery packaging dropped from 65% in 2023 to a much lower 37% in 2024.
And their European operations are even further ahead.
Oh yeah, they've already entirely eliminated plastic from outbound delivery packaging in Europe, which sets the benchmark for the rest of the world.
The SIKT program ships in product packaging is another fascinating example of eliminating that secondary packaging entirely.
It's a huge driver of material reduction. SIPP means that 12% of Amazon packages globally shipped without any additional outer packaging in 2024. Since the program started, over 6 billion shipments have been delivered this way across North America and Europe.
And this is crucial because it leverages their massive procurement power to drive change up the supply chain.
Exactly.
The anecdote about S.C. Johnson perfectly illustrates that leverage.
It does. They worked with S.C. Johnson on their Method body wash, and they collaborated on a redesign that reduced the components from 3 down to just 1. This eliminated the need for secondary plastic packaging entirely and decreased the overall packaging volume by 63%.
That shows the true power of their scale. They can demand packaging standards that force suppliers to innovate and reduce waste at the design stage.
Yes, it's a huge lever.
Finally, the circular practices of reselling and repairing seem crucial to managing the complexity of returns.
They treat the flow of returned and damaged inventory as a resource to be redeployed. They inspect, grade, and repair products to enable resale, with top categories in 2024 being high-value electronics like laptops, tablets, robotic vacuums, and espresso machines.
And they have specific channels for this.
They use Amazon Outlet for overstock and Amazon Resale for graded, tested, used products with condition ratings like very good.
But the most proactive and arguably the most efficient step is using technology to prevent the return from happening in the first place.
Preventing returns is always superior to handling them, both economically and environmentally. The source highlights the use of augmented reality, or AR, widgets for things like furniture and clothing.
So you can see the couch in your living room before you buy it.
Exactly. When customers can virtually view a couch in their living room or try on clothing through their phone before buying, it drastically improves purchase confidence. This AR technology reduced style-related returns by over 40%.
And what about their support program?
Their product lifecycle support program, which offers setup and repair tips, avoided 14 million product returns in 2024 alone. That's a 25% increase from the previous year. You, the customer, avoid the hassle of boxing up a massive item, and they avoid the cost and emissions of reverse logistics. It's a true win-win efficiency loop.
Let's move to Section 5, which reveals the deepest tension between hyperscale logistics and human capital: the workforce, safety, and labor challenges. We'll look first at the company's stated investments in employees, which paint a picture of significant wage and benefit improvement.
From the company's perspective, the investment in its workforce of over 1.5 million global employees is a key strategic priority. They report having invested an incremental $2.2 billion in pay for U.S. frontline operations roles in 2024 alone,
Which brings the average total compensation to
over $29 per hour, including benefits like health insurance and retirement saving.
And they also provide specific, highly granular data on pay equity.
They do. They conduct an annual compensation review that's quite detailed. The 2024 review found that women globally earned 99.9 cents for every dollar men earned in comparable jobs.
And for minorities in the U.S.,
U.S. racial and ethnic minorities earned 99.4 cents for every dollar white employees earned in comparable roles. They are using their internal data to pinpoint and address these minimal gaps.
and the commitment to upskilling through the Career Choice program is huge.
Career Choice provides prepaid tuition for high-demand degrees and certifications. Since 2019, 439,000 employees globally have participated, and importantly, they've shown they're responsive to employee needs.
How so?
In 2024, they removed the 90-day waiting period for new employees to enroll in English and local language classes. It's about increasing immediate accessibility to career pathways for immigrant and non-native speaking staff.
Now let's turn to safety metrics. The sources claim measurable, substantial improvements in the frequency and severity of injuries over the last 5 years.
That is the internal report's claim. They employ over 10,000 dedicated safety professionals for their massive operations workforce. They track 2 key metrics. First, the recordable incident rate, or RIR.
Which measures the frequency of injuries.
Any work-related injury requiring more than basic first aid. And second, the lost time incident rate, or LTIR, which measures the severity, so injuries that require time away from work.
And the progress on these measures.
Over the past 5 years, the global RIR, the frequency, improved by 34%, and the LTIR, severity, improved by 65%. The data suggests that fewer injuries are occurring, and those that do happen are less likely to be severe enough to require time off.
But we know that the most common injury is still directly linked to the high-paced, repetitive nature of the warehouse work.
Absolutely. The structural issue remains musculoskeletal disorders, or MSD strains, sprains, repetitive motion injuries. Even with those RIR improvements, MSDs still account for a huge 57% of all recordable injuries. This is a direct consequence of the speed required to process billions of packages.
And to combat these MSDs, the solution is technology, requiring an investment of over $2 billion in safety since 2019.
They're relying on proprietary technology and robotics to automate the ergonomically taxing parts of the job. They use ErgoPick technology, which ensures employees are picking packages within their ergonomic power zone. They're retrofitting sites with adjustable height workstations.
And then there's the robotics.
Most significantly, new robotic systems are being deployed. You have Sequoia, which transports inventory directly to workstations at an ergonomically friendly height, and then robotics like Robin and Cardinal handle the most repetitive, strain-inducing tasks, sorting, lifting, and placing packages. The goal is to offload that repetitive strain onto the machine, reducing that 57% MSD rate.
Now, we must pivot sharply to the external viewpoint on working conditions and labor concerns, because the narrative here stands as stark contrast to the safety metrics and wage data. These reports allege conditions that directly contradict the company's internal commitments.
The external reports paint a picture of a difficult, physically taxing environment. Worker complaints at a Portland warehouse, for instance, cited working in facilities without adequate air conditioning. Workers reported that when the dock doors were open for deliveries, industrial fans were used, but the facilities were still described as very warm and muggy.
And the pace?
The constant high-speed pace left them feeling exhausted.
And the high-speed logistics environment introduced additional non-ergonomic hazards.
Yes. Workers complained of being constantly exposed to extremely loud, ear-piercing alarms that sound when delivery vans drive into the warehouse to collect packages. They reported chronic headaches from the noise pollution and expressed concerns about breathing vehicle exhaust while working indoors.
And there were regulatory failures, too.
We also see that structural failures persist. An Oregon OSHA inspection cited that Portland facility for violating health and safety rules by not having an effective safety committee, a body that's crucial for workers to raise frontline concerns.
The most disturbing narrative, and one we must dedicate significant time to, is the allegation of injury denial involving the in-house medical staff, AmCare.
This is a deeply concerning allegation because it suggests that internal metrics may be prioritized over worker health. Reports indicate that AmCare staff were allegedly pressured by management to keep workers on the job and away from external doctors.
And the alleged motive was?
To decrease the company's high injury rates, which were drawing intense public scrutiny.
What specifically did former staff members allege managers were doing?
Former AmCare staff reported that managers directly instructed them to reduce the number of employees sent to external doctors because high injury rates made the company look bad. This pressure allegedly continued even when workers sustained serious injuries like severe sprains, torn ligaments, and slipped discs.
So workers were skeptical of the advice they were getting.
They reported being skeptical, feeling that the goal was always to minimize time lost rather than maximize treatment. This external view directly challenges the validity of that internal 34% RIR improvement claim. It suggests regulatory compliance might be prioritized over actual worker recovery.
And when regulatory bodies like OSHA do step in and levy fines for these safety failures, the financial penalties seem negligible given the company's scale.
They're often seen as the cost of doing business. The sources note that fines for serious health and safety violations, like an $81,000 fine in Washington state, are statistically insignificant compared to the company's massive operating budget.
So the argument is that the fines aren't big enough to force real change.
Critics argue that until fines are structured to be painful enough to force meaningful operational shutdowns or infrastructure changes, the underlying issues of pace and monitoring will continue to generate high injury rates.
This brings us to the most significant legal and labor challenge facing the company, the ongoing battle over worker classification, specifically involving the flex drivers.
This is a critical legal vulnerability that challenges the core economic model of their delivery network. In late 2025, the state of New Jersey sued the company and Amazon Logistics for allegedly misclassifying flex delivery drivers as independent contractors.
And the state argues this deprived them of... What, specifically?
Fundamental wages and state benefits, including state-mandated unemployment, temporary disability, and sick leave.
And the entire legal conflict hinges on the argument of control versus independence.
That is the crux of the argument. To be an independent contractor, you must have autonomy over your work. The lawsuit, however, alleges that the company controls crucial elements of the job.
Such as?
Drivers must use the company's mobile app for shifts, instructions, and surveillance. The company rigidly determines routes and deadlines. Drivers are evaluated by standings that directly affect how much work they get. And drivers can be fired without notice if their standing drops.
So the argument is if you control every minute of their day, they're not really contractors.
External labor groups argue that if a business controls every minute of the driver's day, dictating pace and route, they are functionally employees and should be recognized as a joint employer under federal law.
And the financial harm to the individual flex drivers is immediate and substantial.
Oh, the harm is manifold. Flex drivers are forced to use their own personal vehicles and pay for all the associated expenses, gas, insurance, maintenance, tolls, which eats directly into their effective hourly wage.
And they have no safety net.
Crucially, they lack a safety net. The lawsuit cited one driver who injured their back picking up a package and lost 11 days of income because they don't receive sick leave or the workers' compensation readily available to full-time employees.
And they're not paid for all their time.
They're often not paid for extra mandatory tasks, like returning undeliverable packages to the warehouse, which can push their total hours above the 40-hour threshold without the required overtime compensation.
Let's transition now to Section 6, Responsible Sourcing and Community Impact, focusing on the broader global governance structure, which addresses issues of human rights across the complex supply chain.
The governance structure is extensive. They updated their global human rights principles in January 2025 to better align with evolving international labor standards. Crucially, they adopted responsible disengagement guidelines for suppliers.
Which means what exactly?
It means that if a supplier is found to violate labor standards, terminating the relationship is explicitly stated as a last resort. They prioritize remediation and encouraging improvement instead.
And their efforts to increase transparency are moving beyond internal documentation to public disclosure.
That's vital for public accountability. They are actively expanding their public supplier list, particularly in high-risk areas like apparel. In 2024, they began including apparel component suppliers in their public listing and are sharing their supply chain data with the Open Supply Hub, which is an open, nonprofit platform designed to map global supply chains.
Their audit program seems to be undergoing a major expansion as well, recognizing that human rights risks aren't just confined to manufacturing.
Correct. The scope was broadened in 2024. Traditionally, audits focused on suppliers of Amazon-branded products. Now, the program includes third-party labor, service, and not-for-resale goods providers within their logistics, warehousing, and construction supply chain.
Which reflects an understanding that risks exist wherever labor is contracted.
Even for building the facilities themselves.
What were the most frequently cited audit findings in the logistics and service sector?
The audit findings are categorized by severity. The highest rate of medium-level findings in 2024 were in two areas: wages and benefits at 17.0% and emergency preparedness and response at 14.1%.
And the wage findings led to some specific action.
The high rate of wages and benefits findings led the company to conduct a specialized fair wage benchmarking exercise across targeted sites in Bangladesh to ensure legal compliance.
Beyond labor, what are their specific sourcing commitments regarding raw materials and deforestation?
They have commitments to eliminate deforestation links associated with 7 key commodities: palm oil, paper, beef, soy, cocoa, coffee, and tea. To execute this, they became a member of the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, or RSPO, in 2024.
And they've made progress there.
They achieved 100% RSPO-certified palm oil sourcing for in-scope Whole Foods Market products, and between 97% to 100% for Amazon private brands.
And they are also building recycled content directly into their physical devices.
Yes. As a key example of embedding circularity, the new Kindle Colorsoft Signature Edition e-reader features a battery made from 100% recycled cobalt, and the Echo Hub smart home control panel uses magnets made from 100% recycled rare earth elements.
A crucial step for managing the material consequences of rapid electronic sales.
It is.
Finally, let's review the tremendous scale of their community investment milestones, leveraging their massive financial power for social goods like affordable housing and education.
The Housing Equity Fund is the most impactful social investment. They exceeded their original $2 billion goal early, financing over 21,000 affordable homes.
And then they expanded it.
In 2024, they expanded that commitment by a further $1.4 billion, bringing the total commitment to $3.6 billion to create or preserve 35,000 affordable homes in high-cost metro areas like Puget Sound, the National Capital Region, and Nashville.
They also hit their technical skills training goals well ahead of schedule, which is so vital for the modern workforce.
They surpassed their original goal for free cloud computing skills training, having helped 31 million learners globally by the end of 2024, ahead of the 2025 target.
And they have a separate initiative for AI skills.
Recognizing the immediate need for advanced skills, the AWS AI Ready initiative successfully trained over 2 million learners globally in AI skills, also ahead of their 2025 commitment.
And finally, they utilize the sheer scale of their logistics network for disaster response.
This is a direct repurposing of the same complex infrastructure we've been discussing. They leverage 15 global disaster relief hubs stocked with shelter, hygiene, and medical items. In 2024, they responded to 39 disasters across 19 countries, donating and delivering 4.1 million relief items using their integrated global logistics capacity.
So after synthesizing this enormous stack of material, what does this all mean? How do we reconcile the two realities we've analyzed today?
The sources reveal a profound operational paradox. On one side, we see a company executing highly advanced, detailed, and technologically precise sustainability and community programs. They are achieving major, measurable milestones in renewable energy, they're spearheading material innovation with hydrogen steel and carbon-storing concrete, and they're backing massive social initiatives with billions of dollars.
Technologically and financially, they're optimized to fix a lot of global problems.
They are. But this machine for ethical governance is colliding constantly with the machine for hyperspeed fulfillment. The exponential expansion of their physical logistics engine, the sheer volume of packages they move at the speed of air freight, is fueling a surge in transportation pollution that far outpaces their immediate fixes. And the structure of that sprawling physical footprint, especially the reliance on contracted labor and the high-paced monitored warehouse work, perpetuates the conflict's labor classification, as seen in the FlexDriver lawsuit, and those severe allegations of injury denial within their facilities.
It's the constant collision between scale and consequence. They have the resources and the ambition to fix the world, but the velocity required to maintain their market dominance seems to generate new, contradictory problems faster than their technological fixes can solve them.
Precisely. They are aiming for the future while being inescapably defined by the present-day consequences of massive scale.
Thank you for sharing these sources with us and letting us take this incredibly complex deep dive. Synthesizing the ambition against the operational reality is just crucial for understanding how modern global entities function and where their priorities truly lie.
And this raises an important question for you, the learner, to consider moving forward. Given the massive investments in innovation, like the piloting of methane-eating microbes on dairy farms, the use of carbon-storing concrete, and the detailed mapping of high-risk labor areas in the supply chain, will the velocity of these technological and financial fixes outpace the social and environmental consequences generated by the sheer scale and speed of the underlying physical logistics network? Or is the pursuit of that maximum velocity the structural flaw that prevents true net zero and ethical governance from being fully realized?